So with our final look at the ancient Lighthouse of Alexandria, we're going to take a look at the end. And the end, of course, always brings us to the warrior, because the warrior creates the end, using actions to manifest a finality, something that is of permanence in the material world. And what is now permanent about the Lighthouse of Alexandria is that it largely occupies the bottom of the ocean. So since the lighthouse didn't always exist in this state, we can study how to fall gloriously. Why? Because people still talk about this lighthouse. It's still something that's wondered about. So when it fell, it did so in a glorious way, and that's something we can learn about. So as the lighthouse is beneath the ocean, we'll notice that most human beings, in fact a very large percentage, eventually find their way beneath the soil. We all eventually die. So since you know this ahead of time, you can actually plan accordingly. Rather than trying to avert the inevitable, instead work with the inevitable. So how to fall gloriously, and what the lighthouse shows us about this important art form. The first is to plan your rise, because you can't fall unless you are first exalted. So you, as a creator, must plan your exultant rise. And here we can see the foundation that still remains of the lighthouse. You need a foundation. You must build your foundation. No one's going to build your foundation for you. You need to do it. And then you need to put something on top of that foundation. Again, people are not going to bumble into your life and give you a wonderful creation for you to be exalted through. You must build this yourself. And you say, okay, so I build all this, foundation, structure, cool things. Then what? Well, you stand on top, of course. You need to rise into a place of exaltation. The whole point of building a creation that is unique all your own is so that you can stand at the top. And you say, but just to fall? No, not just to fall gloriously. So plan that rise. Plan the wondrous expression, the legacy that you intend to leave. Make it wondrous. And as you're doing this, it's also important to plan your enemies. Now, Egypt, where Alexandria lies, did one thing very well, amongst many things it did. It didn't make an enemy that was so bitter that it came and conquered Egypt and destroyed the lighthouse. No human army ever destroyed the lighthouse. So Egypt was very wise in picking its enemies in this specific regard. So humans, particularly warriors, have this fascination with fighting the world, being this one soldier fighting a whole army. Everybody, just make everybody an enemy, right? Makes an interesting movie. But in reality, what tends to happen is something along these lines. You get this one unskilled warrior taunting and facing off against many more skilled and determined warriors. And we know how this ends. This is a very mundane story. So as a warrior, there needs to be a conscious selection of an enemy. You don't want to just allow your enemies to pick you. So a couple pointers here. You can make enemies of human beings. Now, you want to be selective, but you can do that. You can also make enemies of family. Not as recommended, there will be more consequences there, but again, it needs to happen. You can also make an enemy of government. It seems like every few decades that's necessary. But there is one element of life you do not ever want to make an enemy of. It's not God, it's creation. Why? Because creation keeps your heart beating. Creation brings you food. Creation keeps your mind, heart, and body ready to express. If you make an enemy of creation, start beating your body, start abusing your mind, start belittling your heart, creation is going to accelerate the decay process and take you into the soil faster. You do not want that. You want to partner with the world around you. The two of you together, you and creation, bring forth your exalted creation. So don't make an enemy ever of creation. Be creation's partner, and then pick your enemies wisely, whether they be human beings or governments or family members. Whatever you need to do to make an enemy, you do that, because as a warrior, you're going to need some enemies. But create them, but just don't ever pick creation as an enemy. So as you plan your rise and you carefully plan your enemies, then you want to plan your resurrection. This is what happens after you die. Now, as a warrior, there's a constant fixation on the end, so you're aware of death, the potential for death. But what about beyond death? Now, in the case of the lighthouse, it was brought down by creation eventually, an earthquake, but the stone was reused to build this awesome fort. It was resurrected in another form, which is pretty cool. Now, as a warrior, you can hope that this will happen with your creations and what's left by you, or you can go another route. You can plan. You can plan to leave something beyond your years, something exciting, something that other people will want to come and participate in. What is it going to be? I don't know. You will have to create this yourself. Something that will outlast you. And the interesting thing is, creation likes this idea. Why? Because the creations you make, they're made of atoms and matter. That's creation's world. It works hard with you over your lifetime to make these things that you have. So if you make a way for that to continue, it's very exciting. Creation wants your work to continue. It partnered with you for decades. Don't let that all go to waste. Plan something that will go beyond your years, that will allow your end to be a new beginning. So falling gloriously first requires planning that rise to a place where you can fall, picking your enemies so that the wrong enemies don't come and knock you over before the time is right, and then finally plan your resurrection. Plan something that will outlast you and continue your effect upon the world. Why? Because as a warrior, the end is always the beginning.